Hi everyone, and welcome to our third and final virtual legal clinic conversations event of the semester. My name is Heidi Cáceres, and I am the Assistant Director of the Legal Clinic. I am joined today by an amazing group who will introduce themselves in a moment, but before I forget, I do want to give a special shout out to Angel Morales, who is helping me with the administration of this program. So before we dive into the program, I did want to review just a few housekeeping items. We are recording this session to provide the information to students who were not able to attend. Also, due to the format of today's session, we are encouraging everyone to keep their questions until the end. We'll have a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. But if you do have audio issues, please be sure to throw those into the chat box. So with that, I want to welcome you again to our conversations event featuring our Immigration Law Clinic. So the goal of this session today is to have you
slides like, oh, Heidi, you froze for a second. So I'm not sure. You said the goal of the session and then you froze.
I'm sorry, did I unfreeze?
Okay.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're good now.
So to hear the experience of students that have participated in one or more of the clinics here. So with that, I will turn it over to our director of the Immigration Law Clinic, Professor Ramos.
All right, thank you, Heidi and Angel. It's a great opportunity actually for everyone to also meet Heidi and Angel. If you do participate in any of the legal clinic programs, you will work closely with Heidi and Angel and get to know them. So also an introduction to them who've organized today's session. So I am Professor Ramos. I'm the director of the Immigration Law Clinic. And as Heidi said, this is really just an opportunity for students to meet some of our former students. Actually, Fatima is both a former and also a current advanced student. She's continued to work with me, thankfully, this semester on cases. But really the big takeaway is for students to get to know some of those who participated and to ask questions. And what's really cool about Denna and Fatima is that they were case partners. So they were a team and they worked very closely together throughout the semester. We're awesome teammates. And I'm really thankful to have them here today to talk a little bit about their experience. So with that, I think, I know we've exchanged emails, Fatima and Denna, and we thought the first thing to do is if you wanted to just open it up with talking a little bit about your experience, and then you can kind of take it from there. So thank you both again for being here today. So nice to see you.
Thank you, Professor Ramos. I guess I can start off. So my name is Denna. My pronouns are she and her. I am a 2L traditional day student. I participated in the immigration clinic actually last semester. So I miss seeing everyone's faces, and I'm so happy that I have this opportunity to say hello to everyone again. But I decided to join the immigration clinic because I always had an inkling that I wanted to work for a nonprofit or a public sector job. But I didn't want to maybe necessarily commit a whole summer to that. So I decided to use this as an opportunity to figure out if I wanted to apply to other internships in the nonprofit world. And I ended up actually gaining a lot more experience than I thought I would in this clinic, because I kind of like to call it handheld autonomy. You have a lot of guidance and people to help you through the process, but you're also really responsible for your own work. So you learn what it means to be an attorney through this experience. And I don't think you would necessarily get this experience outside of school. And by that, I mean, you won't get as much guidance and responsibility outside of school. Once you're in the program, you'll be assigned 2 clients. Each student gets 2 clients. And you're in charge of all client interviews, drafting declarations, preparing exhibit packets. And that seems very daunting, especially for someone like me who I had outside legal experience before starting a law school, but I didn't necessarily have full-on responsibility over these clients. I was just a legal secretary. But when you're in the clinic, you are responsible for all these things. And that responsibility teaches you how to time manage better. It teaches you how to connect with your clients and then also maintain communication with your clients and keep a written record of that, because that is very important as an attorney. And if you do decide to participate in the clinic, you will notice that you will always go back to those written communications that you have as a reference to remembering all the different tasks that you have in regards to both of your clients. My time at the clinic taught me how to be clear and concise. And at least I hope I've become at least a little bit better in regards to that. And what I mean by that is both in my legal writing and also in my interviewing skills, I've become much more effective at getting my point across, which was a big issue in the beginning when I started law school. The immigration clinic, you will have to write a declaration for your client. And that's basically a statement explaining who your client is, what they've gone through, and how they're going to become a better person once they receive their citizenship. And I had to write multiple drafts. I had issues coming off as clear and concise. And that got frustrating for me. There's no doubt about it. But unlike your legal writing class, your upper division class, you actually end up learning how to write for somebody else. And that's a different type of motivation that you don't get in your regular core curriculum classes. You're writing for a real person who needs your help. And that's a very different and very rewarding experience. In regards to interviewing, I learned how to bond with my clients and still maintain a professional relationship with them, but one that I can empathize with their experience. I'm sure everyone here is applying to the immigration clinic because they want to somehow reach out to the community and volunteer. So that was also very rewarding, but I also learned how to interview clients, which will eventually make me, I'd like to think, a better extern candidate for internships this summer. I had a couple of issues, and that'll arise while you're in the clinic, and I hope you guys will all decide to participate, but you will come across problems. It's not, you're dealing with real life people, and people aren't very predictable, but it's fun trying to adjust your case strategy to things that arise. And it's nice being in this environment where you have an awesome partner like I did. You have Professor Ramos, you have Heidi, you have Angel. There's so many different resources that you can go to when things happen, which they will, that you don't feel as frustrated or scared. And then you're prepared for that future job or externship. I had 2 clients that were in their early 20s, and I'm in my early 20s. So I got to bond with them a little bit easier. And I felt like a certain kind of kinship towards them. But when it came to setting deadlines for evidence that I needed for the packets that I was making, I had a really hard time, because my clients, I view them in a way as not kids, because I'm the same age, but I understood life gets hard. So I would empathize with them a lot, but I learned how to set clear boundaries. And that was a very important lesson for me to learn now while I'm in school rather than later on. And it held me accountable and my clients accountable. But what ended up happening with that is that I was not able to turn in a full packet, but I was still able to turn in a packet. And I think learning that things aren't predictable in life and your clients aren't predictable was very valuable. I overall think that this experience is probably one of the most realistic classes you can take in law school, unlike torts, crim pro. This class really teaches you how to be an attorney. And I wish all of our classes were like this, because nothing is going to prepare you more than a clinic, whether you decide to do immigration clinic or not, but it's the best clinic. So you should pick immigration clinic. And that's pretty much all I have to say in regards to that. I hope if you guys have any questions, I'll leave my email address in the chat. You guys can always reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Denna. And with that, then I'll pass the baton to Fatima.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fatima Mejia, and I'm a 3L traditional day student. Some of the things I say might sound repetitive, from what Denna said, but I guess I'll try to add as much, more to it. So last semester, I participated in the immigration law clinic. As Professor Ramos said, this semester, an advanced student, meaning, well, I'm still working with her on certain cases, right? But last semester, I can tell you in general that it was an experience that finished convincing me that I chose the right career path and the right field of law too. Just like Denna, I want to work for a nonprofit, and I think working in the clinic just reinforced that feeling that, okay, this is what I truly want to do. So the clinic, it was great, just not just because I learned about the immigration law, but I learned like indispensable skills on how to work with clients of different backgrounds. We learn how to write different types of documents, such as declarations, and how to present a client's case in a packet to send it off to immigration. And all of this was done with the guidance of Professor Ramos, who's just an amazing instructor, and you definitely learn a lot from her. And let me go back to before I applied to the clinic, because I had some concerns, about how the clinic would be. I personally had done only one externship my first summer. Second summer, I wasn't able to do one. But that externship, I was like kind of just thrown into the workload. Like I knew what I was doing, and since the clinic, you get to work with real clients. I didn't want the same to happen. I was concerned, like, well, I didn't know what I was going to be doing. But in the clinic, the professor gives you the tools and the guidance on what to do, and how to do the job. But she doesn't hold your hand. We have to use our own rationale, our own critical thinking, and to be able to learn like what to do. One of the most important skills I learned was how to work with clients, because I will obviously, every attorney has to work with clients regardless of the type of law. And the clinic gave me the opportunity to improve my client intake skills and learn that not every client is the same. Even if you're doing the exact process, for two different people, even, they might be husband and wife or like brother and sister, the intake process is just completely different. One of them may have all the information you need for your applications, and they're going to give you the documents that you're asking for, while the other may just, not even respond to your calls or messages as quickly as you would like them to, because again, we only have that semester to come up with the packet. But you also learn that many times it's not that they don't care about the case. You work with children, with teenagers, who they can't drive their selves to the post office, to send you the documents that you need, or they don't have a cell phone, or they're in school, so they're not able to talk to you whenever you need them. So you learn how to work with them, how to accommodate them, but also setting your own boundaries. And you learn how to form a unique professional relationship with each client. And you learn that, okay, well, many of them, like you have to give them a little more guidance, like provide them a deadline, when like you don't need to do that with others. So, one of the things what we have to do is just complete their packet. I think that's, one of the goals for the end of the semester, and you don't only get to interview the clients and do their intake. You work with them from the very beginning, from like, okay, you meet them, you interview them, you collect the information, and you work with that client to the end. When you complete their immigration packet, you turn it into Professor Ramos before you send it off to USCIS, which is what the immigration services. And the applications are done by the student. We're the ones that collect the evidence. We make sure that the client provides us with the documents that we need to support their case. And one of the very important things of the packet is the writing a declaration. A declaration, it's a very important component of the packet, since it's the chance for the client to tell their story to immigration. That it's why they have to leave their country, why they're requesting a legal status, how going back to their country is going to affect them and their families. And this is where the student's role become very important, because we help them write it and present it in a way that the immigration officer who reads it is going to have like no doubt about the circumstances that the client is facing. For me personally, I was nervous, about interviewing the clients. From the beginning, I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how this is going to be. It's my first client, the first time I meet them. But writing the declaration was definitely my biggest challenge, and I think where I learned like the most, where I improved the most. I talked in my class before that for a client, I understood what they were telling me when it came to the declaration, and I included what they told me in it. And but I learned that what I was writing, it wasn't in a way that just anyone would understand. For example, saying, if I go back to my country, I have to take my children with me. To me, it's like, okay, well, or, to any students, like, well, obviously you're the mother, the father's not around. You're going to have to take them. But in the declaration, you have to be more specific, that the mother is the only caretaker, that there's really like nobody else that can take care of that child in the US. So you have to like be specific in that declaration, or like if a client says, well, there's poverty, there's crime in my back in my country, and I'm like, okay, well, I agree with you, you're right, because I'm familiar with the situation in that country. And I remember, just putting that in my declaration, and Professor Ramos saying, well, but how, like, why, how is it going to affect the client, like, why? And to me, it was like, well, what do you mean? Like, obviously there's crime in the country, and I like that Professor Ramos kept on pushing me, like, no, you need more detail. So what I did is like, I did research, for example, like on the crime rates in the town where the client was from. And I was able to find, okay, well, this town is controlled like by, drug cartels. And I was able to add that to the declaration. And, I just had to make sure that I was painting like a very accurate picture of what the client was trying to say, because I think that's our job, to say, well, I know what the client is saying, but let me put it in a way where the person that's reading it in immigration, they fully understand. So again, I think that's, one of the best skills that we learn, how to like write the client story. So that declaration becomes part of the packet, along with other supporting documents. And those supporting documents that we say could be like, documents to prove that a client has been in the US for 3 years. So that's another, not obstacle, but another thing that you work with where, who saves papers from 3 years ago. So you have to work with the client to make sure that, okay, they're giving you something that's going to be useful, something that's not going to be it's not going to shine a negative light on the client, such as like a citation or like a failure to pay a credit card. So, we learn like, okay, well, this document is not going to, look good for you. So, as you're working, as you're putting your case together, you also learn like other skills that are going to help you professionally. Organizing the file is very important, keeping an organized file, because you need to know where every document is. You need to keep original documents safe because they belong to the client, and those are returned with them once you're done with it. And you also learn like how to maintain a client database, because it's important that you keep track of every step of the process, whatever you've done, meetings with the client, phone calls. Because if anyone from the office, like Professor Ramos, Angel, Heidi, or your case partner, they need to follow up on something, they just look at the database and they know exactly like where the case is at, and then speaking of case partners, right? If they need to follow up on it, your case partner, I think, well, personally, that's an experience that I was glad I had in the clinic. And I think that's something that you're gonna appreciate too. Well, my case partner was Denna, and we didn't know each other from before. We actually met when we got partnered in the clinic, but it felt like we were a team from the beginning. We were there for each other, like texting, calling if we had questions or doubts and about the case, about any law. And if we just found ourselves like, okay, well, neither one of us knows the answer, like we would together like email Professor Ramos, to get an answer. So of course, before you start working on a case and while you're working on it, we do have class where we learn about the different immigration laws and policies, the different types of relief available and the requirements for each of them. And we learn what our clients are eligible for and what step of their immigration proceeding they're in. But most importantly, like we also learn how to, we don't only learn the law, but we learn how to explain it like in a client friendly term, client friendly terms, and which I think it's essential, like as an attorney, to know that your client understands what you're doing for them. So yeah, I hope I think that was, there's like so many things that I wouldn't say, but it was a great experience. I did learn a lot. And if you have any questions, same, I'm gonna leave my email in the chat.
Thank you, Fatima. And I just wanted to add that, that this isn't necessarily something that we would include as sort of like an advertisement about the clinic, but as Fatima and Denna both noted that they enjoyed working with each other, I think that's actually one of the great bonuses of working in a clinic is getting to know other classmates and really getting to know them well and really taking advantage of that opportunity to work closely together as a team. I think it's really cool that you leave the clinic, hopefully with a new friend, because it's nice to meet people in law school and make friends. And I am actually, one of my closest friends is someone I met in clinic. I would never have met her before. We ended up in the clinic together when I was in law school, and she remains one of my dearest friends. So and we still talk about our cases, believe it or not. We still remember the clients that we represented in law school because it becomes very meaningful. For me, it was also my first client. So you just don't forget that. And then I did want to note that, so Denna and Fatima, you both completed the packet. I think Denna, you said that you didn't, but you did. You finished, I know your client didn't turn one thing in, but he eventually did. So they both completed their packets. I sent them off already to immigration, and hopefully we'll have a response, not too long, but they both worked with, one case was a mother-son, so that was very helpful because when we needed something from the son, we would reach out to Fatima, who would talk to the mom, who would then talk to the son. So that was a nice kind of like good cop, bad cop strategy that we sometimes had to implement. And then they both worked with Denna's client was 20, 21, I can't remember. And Fatima's client was a teenager. So that was kind of, it's always fun to work with a teenager. Fatima's client was like a straight A student and was on her way to a smarty pants party, I think is what she told us. But great kids, and they both did great work in their cases. And the last thing, since Fatima talked a little bit about the declaration, her client started crying when Fatima read her declaration to her. She was that moved by the declaration, and I think that she found it to be very compelling that she started crying as Fatima read it to her to confirm, at the very end of the semester, that's part of what we do is review the declaration to make sure it's it's accurate, and to ask the client whether they have any changes. And she definitely, I think we maybe even had to take a break because she was like, got out the Kleenex and everything. So, but with that, I have a construction going on, so I don't want to keep talking, but I think maybe we should open it up to see if anyone has questions. It's a great opportunity for those of you who are here. Any questions, anything you want to know, anything you'd like to ask me, any of us, you could ask questions if there's something administrative that you'd like to know. Heidi, you unmuted yourself, so I wasn't sure if you were about to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, you guys can feel free to write any questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself.
No questions. It's hard when everyone has their screens off, so hopefully you're all there. And, let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that
So there is something that I get a lot of questions from students that maybe Denna can help answer. So there is a question with students thinking that they have to speak Spanish to join the immigration law clinic. So I know I think, Denna, you don't speak Spanish, as you told me, but can you share a little bit about what that experience was like? And just so everybody knows, you are not required to know how to speak Spanish. We work with interpreters, but if that is a question we get often.
So no, unfortunately, I don't speak a lick of Spanish. My partner does. So if I ever needed anything translated, I would either go to any four of you, actually, either Heidi, Angel, Fatima, or Professor Ramos. But it does, you will come across people who speak only Spanish, but there's multiple resources and ways to go around that. Your own clients, Professor Ramos is very conscious about pairing you with a client that speaks either English or Spanish if you speak Spanish. So that's usually not an issue. I don't know if Professor Ramos is going to continue doing that. Maybe she wants to challenge her students, but there's also translators available. So if you go into a client meeting, a translator will be there translating everything for you. So it's not like you will have to do any work whatsoever. And if anything, if that does happen to you, they go out of their way to make it an easy transition. So if that should never be a reason to stop you, but you should learn some Spanish. It comes in handy, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely try to pair students who don't speak Spanish with an English speaking client if that's possible. But I don't think that working with a translator limits the ability of the student to bond with the client. It certainly doesn't impact your work. You're able to do everything. And I have always found that when my English-speaking students or only English-speaking students work with a monolingual Spanish speaker, they still develop a strong relationship, and the clients still bond with them. So I think I feel like a pretty good system. Actually, Heidi trains our translators, and actually Angel translated. We usually hire students. And when needed, Heidi or Angel will step in to help us out. But I usually hire students. So that's kind of nice for them as well to work in the clinic in that role.
We did get a question in the chat from Amelia. The question is for both Denna and Fatima. What was the most challenging aspect of the clinic for each of
Well, I can add, I kind of mentioned it in my before. It was for me, it was the declaration, just because of that, I knew that I had to tell the client whatever the client had to say. And at the beginning, I was very concerned about changing what the client was saying. Okay, well, if I type this, I'm but that's not word by word what the client said, so I learned okay, well, let me change it around, it's this is still what she's saying this is what she's trying to say, but in a way that anyone reading it will understand, will, you know, get a good picture of what the client is going through. And like Professor Ramos said at the end, you know, it's like, I read the declaration, you know, to the client, and she was like, yeah, like, you know, that's like exactly what I want to say. So that was the most challenging thing for me, learning how to, like, you know, okay, write the declaration without like changing what the client is trying to say, because it's still, you know, it's her story. It comes from her. So
I don't know how much I can say without like breaking confidentiality, but
Just
my
no names.
Okay.
No names.
My client was, he would just give me a really hard time with like sticking to deadlines. So I would continuously call him to like tell me, you need to give me this, or you need to go to your doctor's appointment, which you guys will find out later. Your client needs to go get, if they're applying for their green card or U visa, they need to go to a doctor's appointment to get checked out. And he just wouldn't, he would somehow always miss these deadlines. And I'm a really go with the flow kind of person as well. So I'd be like, oh, it's okay. Next week, I'll tell him again. And then it'll turn into 3 weeks. He hasn't done it. So that was my most challenging aspects. Other than that, I was really fortunate. I didn't have a lot of big issues. It was just meeting deadlines, which is a pretty big one. But in regards to Diana's question, a preferred class or semester to be chosen, I don't know if I have the qualifications to answer this, but I say the sooner the better, because you gain so much information from this experience that it'll make you like so much more prepared for your externship coming up in the summer, or your job if you're 3L. So I recommend doing that ASAP. But I don't know if Heidi or Angel, Professor Ramos, or Fatima have anything to say in regards to that.
I mean, we do try to give preference to 3Ls or 4Ls, just to make sure that everyone who wants to participate has the opportunity. You know, so if you're a 2L, at least you could try again. So, but other than that, no, I agree, Denna. It's something that I have not seen a difference necessarily with 2L, 3L, or 4L work. I think it's like Fatima and Denna have talked about, I really try to provide you with the tools in class and the same kind of support. So there's really, it's okay either way. And what was I going to say? Oh, I'll just say that, yeah, Denna was amazing with her patience with her client. You know, these are real clients. They're not prepared hypothetical clients. So it's kind of, it is what it is in terms of what we have to deal with. And Denna's patience was tested beyond belief, I have to say. I am very thankful for her ability to work with a very challenging client who, you know, we didn't know necessarily, so, but that was going to happen. And I know that, I think there was a question about research, and just briefly, in terms of whether you have to conduct research depends on your case. There is an assignment that I assign every single semester, which is researching specific grounds of inadmissibility, and you'll have to conduct research for that presentation and then work through a hypothetical. So that's an assignment, but otherwise the research relates to your case, and it all depends on what comes up on your case. Like this semester, for example, we've had a lot of different challenges, and actually many students have had to conduct research due to what's happened on the case. But because they're real cases, I don't have like stock assignments for everything, because, you know, maybe that one client doesn't have certain issues that you have to deal with, and another one does. And so then you have to conduct the research accordingly. So, and that also goes to just that it's really like working in a law firm, and it's not necessarily like a doctrinal class where you have to do research, right? Because the real focus is the casework. So, but that's a good question, and that is partly why I included it as an assignment piece, so that you at least have that experience of researching in the area of immigration law. And Camelia, it looks like you raised your hand.
Yes, I wanted to ask a follow-up about that, and I apologize about needing to have my camera off earlier, but thank you guys for answering my questions. So I guess specifically what I was wondering is, like I have a background in employment-based immigration, and so we don't do a lot, like we didn't do a lot of case law research at the prior firms that I worked at, but you know, there's the statutory part that you're consistently looking at, and so I guess that's like, these are new areas of law to me. Like I'm in Professor Vasquez's community lawyering clinic. And so I've had to do some statutory research there. But again, not really doing any case law. And so I guess I was curious to know if that's kind of the type of stuff that you come across, or, and I also understand it totally depends on each case.
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends on the case. So the area that there would be research assignments is related to grounds of inadmissibility. Really, that's where it would come up more than anything. So if you're a client in this semester, we actually have clients with very challenging grounds of inadmissibility, and we've had to do research to try to figure out, you know, like, is this a problem? You know, how do we deal with it? So it's purely case specific. So yeah, there's really like no, like for example, with the U visa, there's challenges in our current caseload due to like a definition of a bystander, whether the client qualifies as a bystander, and then even research regarding substantial harm, because we are working with kind of like a non-traditional case, so we don't have physical harm. So our students actually have done research on what qualifies as harm under immigration law, but it's just really case specific.
That actually makes a lot of sense, and that was very helpful. Thank you.
Good, yeah. And it's I'll just also add, you know, actually we have a little bit more time, that we are also in a very positive moment in immigration law, and that there have been a lot of changes. And actually 10 days ago, there was a huge announcement regarding special immigrant juvenile status, which is an area that we work in. Denna and Fatima both worked on a special immigrant juvenile status case. And 10 days ago, there was a new policy announced, and regulations, which are 162 pages. So I have not made my way through all of the new regulations, but that's going to affect our work. And there will be some interesting sort of changes that I will have to implement for the fall that are new and different, and that I'm kind of trying to implement on the fly right now because it was just announced. So that's kind of another cool part of the experience, is that you're working in a real world setting. And so when there are immigration changes, you kind of have to deal with them. So Denna and Fatima actually were the first group with a bona fide determination policy, right? Yes, the BFD policy. So there was a new policy in the U visa world that we talked about extensively, and it was brand new. They were the first group of students to work on it. So I think that part's been really cool and fun, and that we're in like an administration that I think is considered to be supportive of immigration applicants, you know, in getting your status and so forth, as opposed to other policies that we've dealt with in the past, which were on the negative end. If there's other questions. So Angel, do you want to post I actually wanted to just share really quickly. This will be a flash from the past for Denna and Fatima. I pulled the slides so one really cool thing, so I thought it would be kind of fun to end with this, that I did last semester, is I had each student share a little bit about their case partner. And so Denna wrote this about Fatima, and then Fatima wrote something about Denna that I shared with the class at the end of the semester. But it just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of, I think, you know, truly what they were feeling at that moment, working in the clinic and working together, and some of the highlights. So this is about Fatima, and then if you want to go to the next slide, you can share. So this is what Fatima wrote about Denna. So it was I had never done that before, as I told the class. I had truly never had this kind of exercise before, but I thought it was a nice way to celebrate each other and the collaboration, because it really was a very collaborative class. So that's one piece that I really appreciated and I think made the experience even more positive. So I don't know if any other like final, questions or comments. No? So I think that's all I have. I'm sorry, I have so much construction going on that I feel like I want to keep turning my sound off, but if no one has any other questions, I don't, Heidi, oh, you were about to say something.
I was gonna just close us up. So thank you again to Professor Ramos and for Denna and Fatima for joining us today. And thank you all. I know we had a lot of competing events today. So thank you for being here and joining us. So our final event for the semester, where we kick off the student applications, is our legal clinic information session. So that will be Thursday, March 31st at the lunch hour. It will also be a virtual event. And we hope that if you're interested in joining one, or maybe you're thinking about different clinics and not sure which one, we'll have all of the clinics come together and discuss what each is about. And again, that's where we formally open up our application process. So hopefully you can join us. If not, we will also be recording it and sending it to you all. So make sure to register, and the information is on the Today at Southwestern announcements. So go ahead and register for that. But with that, thank you again. We'll stay on for a few more minutes if you do have any other questions or thoughts. But thank you and have a good rest of your day.